The rain hammered against the tall windows of the Russo estate like bullets, each drop a reminder that some storms you can't outrun. Chloe Martinez pressed her back against the Ma room door, her heart pounding so hard she could barely hear her own thoughts. In her trembling hand, she held the phone. His phone, the screen still glowing with an image that made no sense. It was her. Dozens of photos. Her walking to the bus stop, her laughing at the coffee shop, her sitting on her apartment steps. How long had he been watching? Looking for something? The voice cut through the darkness like a blade, smooth and dangerous. Dominic Russo stepped out of the shadows, his black suit perfectly tailored, his dark eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her breath catch. He didn't look angry. He looked hungry. Chloe's voice came out barely above a whisper. "These photos. Why do you have photos of me?" He moved closer, slow and deliberate, like a predator who knew his prey had nowhere to run. "Because from the moment I saw you 3 months ago, I couldn't stop thinking about you. So I watched. I waited, and then I brought you here." His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "You applied for the job thinking it was luck. It wasn't luck, Chloe. It was me." She should have been terrified. Every rational part of her brain screamed to run, to get as far away from this man as possible. But she couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't look away from those eyes that saw too much. "I don't understand," she whispered. "You will." He reached out, his fingers brushing a strand of hair from her face, the touch so gentle it contradicted everything she'd heard about Dominic Russo, the man who made his enemies disappear, who controlled half the city through fear and power. "I told you earlier that I wouldn't let you sleep tonight. I meant it. But not the way you think." The storm outside raged on, but inside that room the real storm was just beginning. If you're drawn into stories where danger meets desire, where power bows to the one thing it can't control, love, then stay with us. This is just the beginning of Chloe and Dominic's impossible story. 3 days earlier, Chloe had stood in front of the massive iron gates with a crumpled job posting in her hand and doubt in her heart. The Russo estate loomed before her like something out of a Gothic novel, all stone and shadows and secrets. The ad had been simple. Housekeeper needed, excellent pay, discretion required. She'd applied on a whim, desperate after losing her job at the diner, and shocked when she got a call back within hours. Now, standing here, she wondered if desperation had made her stupid. The gates opened silently, and a man in a black suit appeared. No smile, no greeting. Just a curt "follow me" before he turned and walked up the long driveway. Chloe clutched her worn purse and followed, her sneakers crunching on gravel that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe. The mansion was even more intimidating up close. Floor-to-ceiling windows reflected the gray sky, and marble steps led to doors that looked like they belonged in a museum. The suited man, she assumed he was security, led her through a side entrance into a kitchen that could have serviced a 5-star restaurant. Stainless steel gleamed under recessed lighting, and the smell of fresh coffee filled the air. "Wait here," he said, then disappeared. Chloe stood awkwardly by the island, taking in her surroundings. Everything screamed money, the kind of wealth she'd only seen in movies. Her apartment could fit in this kitchen alone. What kind of person needed a place this big? And why did they need her specifically? "Miss Martinez." Another voice, this one smoother, pulled her attention to the doorway. A woman in her 50s appeared, dressed impeccably in a gray suit, her silver hair pulled back in a severe bun. "I'm Mrs. Chen, the house manager. You're early." I didn't want to be late," Chloe stammered. Mrs. Chen's expression didn't change. "Punctuality is appreciated. However, you should know that Mr. Russo values discretion above all else. What you see here, what you hear here, stays here. Is that understood?" "Yes, ma'am." "Good. Your duties will include maintaining the East Wing, meal preparation when the regular chef is unavailable, and general household tasks as needed. Mr. Russo is a very private man. You will not enter his personal study or bedroom without explicit permission. You will not ask questions about his business. You will not discuss this employment with anyone outside these walls. The way she said business made Chloe's skin prickle. She'd heard the name Russo before, whispered in the same breath as words like dangerous and untouchable. But she needed this job. She needed the money. I understand, Chloe said quietly. Mrs. Chen studied her for a long moment, and Chloe had the uncomfortable feeling of being weighed and measured. Finally, the older woman nodded. You start tomorrow, 6 a.m. Don't be late. That should have been it. A simple job interview, in and out. But as Chloe turned to leave, she felt it. That prickling sensation of being watched. She glanced back and saw him for the first time. He stood in the doorway Mrs. Chen had emerged from, partially hidden in shadow. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a black suit that probably cost more than her car. But it was his eyes that stopped her cold. Dark, intense, fixed on her with a focus that made her heart stutter. He didn't smile. Didn't speak. Just watched her with an expression she couldn't read. Mr. Russo, Mrs. Chen said quickly. This is the new housekeeper, Chloe Martinez. Chloe managed a small nod, her voice catching in her throat. Hello? He didn't respond, just continued to stare at her with those unreadable eyes for what felt like an eternity. Then, without a word, he turned and walked away, disappearing back into the shadows of the house. That's him? Chloe whispered. Mrs. Chen's lips pressed into a thin line. That's him. And if you're smart, Miss Martinez, you'll do your job and stay out of his way. But as Chloe left the mansion that day, she couldn't shake the feeling that staying out of Dominic Russo's way was going to be impossible. The next morning, Chloe arrived at 5:50 a.m., determined to make a good impression. The estate was even more imposing in the pre-dawn darkness, lit by subtle landscape lighting that made the whole place look like a fortress. The same silent security guard let her in, and Mrs. Chen appeared moments later with a clipboard and a schedule that made Chloe's head spin. The East Wing needs to be cleaned top to bottom by noon, Mrs. Chen explained as they walked through hallways lined with artwork Chloe was afraid to look at too closely. Mr. Russo has a meeting here this afternoon. Everything must be perfect. I'll make sure it is, Chloe promised. She spent the morning in a blur of dusting, vacuuming, and polishing surfaces that barely looked dirty to begin with. The East Wing was massive. Several bedrooms, a library, a sitting room with furniture that looked antique and expensive. She worked carefully, afraid to break anything, and tried not to think about the fact that she was cleaning a Mafia boss's house. Because that's what he was, wasn't he? She'd done some research last night, though she'd been careful not to dig too deep. Dominic Russo, 32 years old, took over his family's business when he was 25 after his father's sudden death. The articles never said exactly what that business was, but the implications were clear. Power, control, a network that stretched across the entire city and beyond, and she was dusting his bookshelves. Around 11, Chloe finished the library and moved to the sitting room. She was kneeling by the fireplace, carefully cleaning the marble mantel, when she heard footsteps behind her. She froze, sensing his presence before she saw him. You're thorough. His voice was deep, measured, with an edge that made her pulse quicken. Mrs. Chen chose well. Chloe slowly turned, still kneeling, and looked up to find Dominic Russo standing in the doorway. In the daylight streaming through the windows, she could see him clearly now. Dark hair swept back from a face that was all sharp angles and dangerous beauty. A neat stubble shadowed his jaw. His suit was midnight black, the shirt underneath crisp white, and he wore it with the kind of confidence that came from knowing he was untouchable. But it was his eyes that trapped her, dark brown, almost black, and fixed on her with that same intense focus from yesterday. Thank you, Mr. Russo, she managed, getting to her feet. Her white shirt and black pants suddenly felt shabby compared to his immaculate appearance. He moved into the room, and she instinctively took a step back. He noticed. His lips curved slightly, not quite a smile. "You're afraid of me." "I'm cautious," Chloe corrected, lifting her chin. "There's a difference." That got his attention. His eyebrows rose slightly, and for the first time, she saw something other than that blank intensity. Interest. "Most people who work for me don't correct me. Should I apologize?" "No." He crossed to the window, looking out at the grounds. "I prefer honesty. It's rare in my world." Chloe didn't know what to say to that, so she stayed quiet, watching him. He seemed lost in thought, one hand in his pocket, the other resting on the window frame. The morning light outlined his profile, and despite everything she knew about him, despite the warning bells ringing in her head, she couldn't deny that he was magnetic. "You grew up on the South Side," he said suddenly, still looking out the window. Chloe's heart skipped. "How did you—" "I know everything about the people who work in my home." He turned to face her, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. Chloe Ann Martinez, 25 years old, graduated from community college 2 years ago with a degree in graphic design. Lost your job at Morrison's Diner 3 weeks ago when they closed. You live alone in a studio apartment on 7th Street. No family in the city. No boyfriend. The way he said that last part made her skin flush. That's invasive. That's necessary. He took a step closer, and she fought the urge to retreat again. "You're in my home, Chloe. I need to know who you are." "And who are you?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. "Really?" The air between them seemed to charge. For a moment, she thought she'd gone too far, crossed some invisible line. But instead of anger, she saw something flicker in his eyes. Approval? "Careful," he said softly, moving closer still. He was close enough now that she could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive. "Curiosity in my world can be dangerous." "Is that a threat?" "It's a warning." He reached out slowly, and Chloe's breath caught as his fingers touched the edge of her collar, straightening it. The touch was brief, barely there, but it sent electricity racing down her spine. "You should finish your work, Miss Martinez. I have guests arriving soon." Then he was gone, leaving her standing there with her heart pounding and her hands shaking. She pressed them against her thighs, trying to steady herself. What the hell was that? And why did part of her want him to come back? She shook her head, forcing herself to focus. This was a job. Just a job. It didn't matter that her employer was dangerous and magnetic, and looked at her like he could see straight through her defenses. She needed the money. She needed to keep her head down and do the work. But as she packed up her cleaning supplies an hour later, Mrs. Chen appeared with an odd expression. "Mr. Russo wants to see you in his study before you leave." Chloe's stomach dropped. "Did I do something wrong?" "I don't know." Mrs. Chen's tone was clipped. "But when Mr. Russo summons you, you don't keep him waiting." The study was on the main floor, down a hallway Chloe hadn't explored yet. The door was partially open, and she could see him inside, sitting behind a massive mahogany desk, talking on the phone in a language she didn't recognize. Italian, maybe? When he saw her in the doorway, he gestured for her to enter and wait. Chloe stepped inside, trying not to gawk at her surroundings. The study was all dark wood and leather, with bookshelves lining the walls and a fireplace that could have fit her entire bathroom. Framed photographs sat on one shelf. She caught glimpses of a younger Dominic with an older man who must have been his father. "Tomorrow night," Dominic said into the phone, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Not next week. Tomorrow." A pause. "I don't care. Make it happen." He ended the call and set the phone down, his attention shifting to Chloe. "Close the door." Her heart hammered as she obeyed. Alone in a room with Dominic Russo suddenly felt far more dangerous than it should. "You did good work today," he said, leaning back in his chair. Mrs. Chen was impressed. "Thank you. I want you to work the evening shift tomorrow as well. There's a dinner party. I need someone I can trust to handle it properly." Chloe nodded. "Of course. What time?" 6 p.m. Wear something appropriate." His eyes traveled over her in a way that made her skin heat. Not leering exactly, but assessing. Black and white. Professional. "I understand." He stood, moving around the desk with that predatory grace she was starting to recognize. "One more thing. The guests tomorrow are important. You'll see things, hear things. Remember what Mrs. Chen told you about discretion." "I won't say anything to anyone." "Good." He was close again. Close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "Because I protect what's mine, Chloe. And anyone who works in this house, they're mine to protect. But that protection only extends as far as your loyalty." It wasn't a threat, exactly. More like a promise. And despite the warning bells, despite knowing she should be terrified, all Chloe could think about was the way he said her name. Soft, almost possessive. "I understand, Mr. Russo." "Dominic," he corrected quietly. "When we're alone, call me Dominic." Before she could respond, before she could process what that meant, he stepped back and returned to his desk, effectively dismissing her. "That's all. See you tomorrow evening." Chloe left the study on shaky legs, her mind racing. This job was supposed to be simple. Clean the house, make some money, move on. But nothing about Dominic Russo was simple. And the way he looked at her, the way he spoke to her, it felt like something was building between them, something dangerous and inevitable. She just didn't know yet how right she was. The next evening, Chloe arrived at the Russo estate dressed in her best black pants and white blouse, her hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. Mrs. Chen met her at the staff entrance with a critical eye, circling her once before nodding approval. "You'll do. Listen carefully. Tonight's guests are powerful men. You serve drinks, you clear plates, and you disappear. Do not make eye contact unless spoken to directly. Do not linger. And absolutely do not repeat anything you hear. Understood?" "Yes, ma'am." The dinner party was being held in the formal dining room, a space Chloe hadn't seen before. Crystal chandeliers hung from coffered ceilings, and a table long enough to seat 20 dominated the room. When she entered to help set up, she found Dominic already there, instructing 2 other staff members on the placement of wine glasses. He was dressed in an all-black suit tonight, no tie, the top button of his shirt undone. The casual elegance suited him, made him look even more dangerous. When his eyes found hers across the room, something flickered in their depths. Recognition, awareness, something that made her stomach flip. "Chloe," he said, his voice carrying easily. "You'll handle the bar tonight. Giovanni will show you where everything is." The evening began smoothly enough. Guests arrived in expensive cars, men in tailored suits who moved with the kind of confidence that came from knowing they were untouchable. Chloe recognized a few faces from the news, a city councilman, a prominent businessman, a judge. But the way they deferred to Dominic, the way they watched him for approval, told her everything she needed to know about who really held the power in the room. She poured drinks and stayed invisible, just as Mrs. Chen had instructed, but she couldn't help listening to the fragments of conversation that drifted her way. "The shipment arrives Tuesday. The mayor wants assurances. Tell Carmine we don't negotiate with threats." It was all coded, carefully worded, but the implications were clear. These men weren't just businessmen. They were the infrastructure of something much darker, and Dominic sat at the center of it all like a king holding court. Around 9 p.m., most of the guests had moved to the sitting room for cigars and brandy. Chloe was clearing glasses from the dining room when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned to find a man she hadn't seen before, older, maybe 50, with silver hair and cold blue eyes. "Well, well," he said, his gaze traveling over her in a way that made her skin crawl. "Dominic's hired some new decoration, I see." Chloe forced a polite smile. "Can I get you something, sir?" "You could tell me your name, sweetheart." "I'm just here to work, sir." He laughed, a sound with no humor in it. "Modest. I like that. Does Dominic know how pretty his new housekeeper is? Or is that part of the appeal?" Before Chloe could respond, a voice cut through the room like ice. "Castellano." Dominic stood in the doorway, and the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. His expression was neutral, but his eyes were lethal as they fixed on the silver-haired man. "The others are waiting for you in the sitting room." Castellano smirked, but Chloe saw the way his jaw tightened. "Of course. Just admiring your taste in staff, Russo. You always did appreciate beauty. Move, now." The command in Dominic's voice was absolute. Castellano's smirk faded, and without another word, he left the dining room. The moment he was gone, Dominic's attention shifted to Chloe. "Are you all right?" She nodded, surprised by the concern in his tone. "I'm fine. He was just inappropriate." He was out of line. Dominic moved closer, his hand lifting as if to touch her arm, then dropping. "Castellano is a snake. Stay away from him." "Is he one of your business partners?" Dominic's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "He's someone I tolerate because it's necessary, not someone I trust. There's a difference." "Like there's a difference between being afraid and being cautious?" That got a real smile from him, brief but genuine. "Exactly like that. You're smart, Chloe. Smarter than most people I meet." "I have a feeling that's not a compliment in your world. In my world, intelligence is the only thing that keeps you alive." He glanced toward the sitting room where voices drifted out. "I need to get back, but after tonight, you're done serving at these gatherings." Chloe frowned. "Why? Did I do something wrong?" "No, you did everything right. That's the problem." He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "Men like Castellano, they see someone like you and they think you're fair game. I won't have that. You'll work days only from now on." "I need the hours. You'll get the same pay." His tone left no room for argument. "This isn't negotiable, Chloe." She should have been annoyed by his high-handedness, by the way he made decisions for her without asking. But instead, she felt something warm unfurl in her chest. He was protecting her. In his own commanding, impossible way, he was trying to keep her safe. "Thank you," she said softly. His eyes searched hers for a long moment, and Chloe felt that pull again, that magnetic attraction that defied all logic. Then he stepped back, the moment breaking. "Finish up here and go home. I'll have someone drive you. I can take the bus." "Chloe." Just her name, said in that low, commanding tone. "Let me do this. Please." The please surprised her. It softened the command, made it a request. She found herself nodding, unable to refuse him. After the guests finally left and Chloe had helped clean up, a different security guard appeared, younger than the silent one from before, with a kind face. "Miss Martinez, I'm Marcus. Mr. Russo asked me to drive you home." The car was a sleek black sedan that probably cost more than she'd make in 5 years. Marcus was professional and quiet, making small talk only when Chloe initiated it. When they pulled up to her modest apartment building, he got out to open her door. "Mr. Russo wants to make sure you get inside safely," Marcus explained. "I'll wait until I see your light come on." Chloe felt a strange flutter in her chest. "That's really not necessary." "Please, Miss Martinez. It'll be my head if I don't follow orders." She relented, climbing the stairs to her third-floor studio and flicking on the light. Through the window, she saw Marcus nod once before getting back in the car and driving away. Only then did she notice the envelope on her small kitchen table. Her heart stuttered. She'd locked the door this morning. She was sure of it. But there it was. A thick, cream-colored envelope with her name written in elegant script. With shaking hands, she opened it. Inside was a check that made her gasp. Triple what they'd agreed on for her first week's wages. And beneath it, a note in the same elegant handwriting. You work hard. You deserve to be compensated fairly. This is not charity. This is recognition of your value. Dr. Chloe sank onto her second-hand couch, staring at the check. He'd been in her apartment, or he'd sent someone in. The thought should have terrified her, should have sent her running to the police. But instead, all she could think about was the way he'd looked at her tonight, the way he'd protected her from Castellano, the way he'd said, please. Dominic Russo was dangerous. He was a criminal, a man who made people disappear, who controlled the city through fear and power. She should quit. She should take this check, cash it, and never go back to that mansion. But even as the thought crossed her mind, she knew she wouldn't. Because for the first time in her life, someone saw her, really saw her, and valued what they found. Even if that someone was the most dangerous man in the city. The next morning, Chloe returned to the Russo estate with the check in her purse and a decision made. She found Mrs. Chen in the kitchen, reviewing inventory, and held out the envelope. I need to speak with Mr. Russo. Mrs. Chen's eyebrows rose. He's in a meeting. I'll wait. Something in Chloe's tone must have conveyed her determination, because Mrs. Chen nodded slowly. I'll let him know you're here, but don't expect him to drop everything. He's a busy man. Chloe waited in the kitchen for 20 minutes, her resolve wavering with each passing second. What was she doing? Confronting a mafia boss about invading her privacy? This was insane. But before she could talk herself out of it, Dominic appeared in the doorway. He looked like he'd been up all night. Tie loosened, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms that were distractingly well-defined, a shadow of stubble darkening his jaw. But his eyes were alert, focused entirely on her. Chloe, Mrs. Chen said it was important. She held out the envelope. You were in my apartment. He didn't deny it. I was ensuring you lived somewhere safe. You broke into my home. I had a key made when I ran your background check. He said it so matter-of-factly, like breaking and entering was just another item on his to-do list. I needed to see your living conditions, make sure you weren't in danger. That's not okay. Chloe's voice rose, frustration overriding caution. You don't get to invade my privacy like that. To her surprise, Dominic's expression shifted. Something like regret flickered across his features. You're right. I overstepped. The admission stunned her into silence. He moved into the kitchen, closing the distance between them. I'm not good at caring about someone without trying to control the situation. It's how I've survived. But you deserve better than that. You care about me? The words came out barely above a whisper. His eyes met hers, and the intensity there stole her breath. From the moment I saw you 3 months ago, sitting in that coffee shop on 7th Street, arguing with your laptop because the Wi-Fi was slow. You were wearing a yellow dress and you had paint on your fingers from some project. You smiled at the barista even though he got your order wrong. You tipped him anyway. Chloe's heart hammered against her ribs. You've been watching me for 3 months? I've been captivated by you for 3 months. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The touch was gentle, reverent. I knew I was being obsessive. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't stop. So I created a job opening. I made sure you saw the posting. I brought you here because the thought of not seeing you every day was unbearable. She should run. She should be horrified. But all she could focus on was the vulnerability in his voice, the way his hand trembled slightly against her cheek. You're a criminal, she whispered. Yes, you've hurt people. Yes, you're dangerous, to everyone but you. His thumb brushed her cheekbone, the gesture achingly tender. I would burn this entire city down before I let anyone hurt you, Chloe. That's how far gone I am. The confession hung between them, heavy with implication. Chloe knew she should step back, should put distance between them, but she couldn't move, couldn't look away from those dark eyes that promised both danger and devotion. I don't know what to do with this, she admitted. With you. Then don't do anything. Just stay. Work here. Let me see you. That's all I'm asking. Is it? Because the way he was looking at her suggested he wanted far more than that. His jaw tightened. What I want and what I'm allowing myself to take are two different things. I won't touch you, Chloe. Not unless you ask me to. You have my word. It was that promise, that evidence of restraint from a man who probably never restrained himself, that undid her. Chloe made a decision that was probably stupid, definitely dangerous, but felt more right than anything she'd done in years. She stepped closer, closing the distance he'd maintained. What if I want you to touch me? The air between them ignited. Dominic's eyes darkened, his hand moving from her cheek to cup the back of her neck. Careful, Chloe. I'm barely holding on as it is. Then maybe you should stop holding on. He made a sound low in his throat, somewhere between a groan and a growl. Do you have any idea what you're doing to me? Probably not. She placed her hand on his chest, feeling his heart pound beneath her palm. But I want to find out. For a moment, she thought he might actually kiss her. She could see the war playing out in his eyes, desire versus restraint, want versus honor. Then, with visible effort, he stepped back, his hand falling away. Not like this, he said roughly. Not when you're confused and I'm taking advantage. You're not. I am. He ran a hand through his hair, the gesture betraying his frustration. You don't know what you're saying yes to, Chloe. You don't understand what being with me means. The danger, the scrutiny, the fact that I'll never be able to let you go once I have you. Maybe I don't want you to let me go. His eyes closed briefly, as if her words pained him. When he opened them again, the raw hunger there made her knees weak. Go home, Chloe. Think about this. Really think about it. And if you still want this tomorrow, if you still want me, then we'll talk. It wasn't a dismissal. It was a reprieve. A chance for her to change her mind before she jumped off a cliff she couldn't climb back from. And despite the frustration thrumming through her veins, despite wanting to grab him and kiss him until neither of them could think straight, Chloe recognized the gift he was giving her. Tomorrow then, she whispered. His lips curved into something almost like a smile. Tomorrow. As Marcus drove her home that afternoon, Chloe stared out the window and tried to process what had just happened. Dominic Russo, feared Mafia boss, dangerous criminal, the man who made others tremble, had watched her for months, had orchestrated bringing her into his life, had confessed to being obsessed with her, and she'd told him she wanted him to touch her. The smart thing would be to run, to take the money he'd given her and disappear. But Chloe had never been good at doing the smart thing when her heart was involved. And somehow, impossibly, her heart was already involved with a man who represented everything she should fear. That night, alone in her studio apartment, she made a list of all the reasons she should quit. He's a criminal. He invaded my privacy. He's dangerous. Being with him could get me killed. He's obsessed with me. Red flag. I barely know him. This can't end well. Then she made a list of reasons to stay. The way he looks at me like I'm the only person in the world. He protected me from Castellano. He's giving me a choice when he could just take. For the first time in my life, someone sees me. The way his hand trembled when he touched my face. I've never felt this alive. Maybe it doesn't have to end. Maybe we could find a way. When she finished, she stared at both lists for a long time. Then she crumpled up the first list and threw it away. Tomorrow, she would go back to the Russo estate. Tomorrow, she would look Dominic in the eyes and tell him yes, to whatever he was offering, to whatever came next. Because sometimes the most dangerous choice was also the only one that felt like living. The morning sun felt different when Chloe woke up. Brighter somehow, full of possibility and danger in equal measure. She dressed carefully, choosing a white blouse and black pants that made her feel confident, and arrived at the Russo estate with her heart in her throat. Mrs. Chen greeted her at the door with an unreadable expression. "Mr. Russo is in the garden. He asked that you join him when you arrived." The garden, not the study, not the kitchen. Somewhere open, somewhere that felt less like a business transaction and more like... What? A date? The thought made her pulse race. She found him standing by a fountain, his back to her, hands in the pockets of his perfectly tailored black pants. He wore a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up, no jacket, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked almost relaxed. Almost. "You came back," he said without turning around. "I told you I would." He turned then, and the look in his eyes stole her breath. Relief. Hope. And underneath it all, that hunger that never quite disappeared. "I wasn't sure you would. I thought maybe you'd come to your senses." Chloe moved closer, her sneakers quiet on the stone path. "Maybe I did. Maybe my senses are telling me something different than what logic says." "And what are your senses telling you?" She stopped a few feet away from him, close enough to see the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw was clenched like he was holding himself back. "That you're dangerous. That this could destroy me. But also that I've never felt more alive than when I'm near you." Something in his expression cracked open. "Chloe, I thought about it all night, Dominic. I made lists, weighed the risks, tried to convince myself to run." She took another step closer. "But I kept coming back to the way you look at me. Like I matter. Like I'm not invisible." "You could never be invisible." His voice was rough, raw. "You walk into a room and everything else fades. You smile and the world gets brighter. You exist and I can't think about anything else." The confession hung between them, beautiful and terrifying. Chloe closed the remaining distance, standing so close she could feel the heat radiating from his body. "Then stop fighting this. Stop pushing me away. I'm trying to protect you." "From what? From you?" She placed her hand on his chest, feeling his heart pound. "You're the only person who's ever really seen me, Dominic. The only one who looked past the surface to what's underneath. That's not something I can walk away from." His hand came up to cover hers, pressing it harder against his heart. "You don't know what you're asking for. Once I let myself have you, I won't be able to let go. I'll be possessive, jealous. I'll want to know where you are every moment. I'll want to eliminate every threat, real or imagined. That's not romance, Chloe. That's obsession. I know." She reached up with her free hand, touching his jaw, feeling the stubble rasp against her palm. "And I'm saying yes anyway." The last thread of his control snapped. With a sound somewhere between a groan and a prayer, Dominic pulled her against him, one hand sliding into her hair while the other wrapped around her waist. He didn't kiss her, not yet, just held her there, his forehead pressed against hers, their breaths mingling. "Tell me to stop," he whispered against her lips. "Tell me this is insane and we should both walk away." "I can't. I don't want to." That was all the permission he needed. His lips captured hers in a kiss that was nothing like she'd imagined. It wasn't gentle or tentative. It was consuming, desperate, like he was trying to devour her soul and give her his in return. His hand tightened in her hair, angling her head to deepen the kiss, and Chloe melted against him, her fingers clutching his shirt to keep from falling. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dominic rested his forehead against hers again. "Mine," he said softly, the word a vow and a warning. "You're mine now, Chloe. Say it." "Yours," she whispered back, and felt the tremor that ran through his body. God help us both. The next few days were a blur of stolen moments and careful secrecy. Dominic explained that his world was dangerous, that rivals would see her as a weakness to exploit if they knew how much she meant to him. So they kept their relationship hidden, at least from the outside world. Inside the mansion, in the spaces between her work duties, he would find her. A touch as he passed her in the hallway. A lingering look across the dinner table when Mrs. Chen wasn't watching. Late evenings in his study where she'd sit curled in a chair reading while he worked, content just to be in the same room. But it was the nights that changed everything. He'd started having Marcus drive her home, then follow her up to make sure her apartment was safe. And one night, Dominic himself showed up at her door. "I couldn't stay away," he admitted, looking almost vulnerable standing in her tiny hallway. "I tried. I told myself you needed space, that I was being too much. But then I thought about you here alone and Chloe pulled him inside, closing the door behind him. "You don't have to explain. I'm glad you're here." They talked for hours that night, about his childhood, about how his father had built an empire on fear and violence, about how Dominic had tried to be different, but ended up becoming exactly what he'd sworn he wouldn't. About her dreams of being an artist, about losing her parents young, about feeling invisible in a world that seemed to only see her as forgettable. "You're not forgettable," Dominic said fiercely, pulling her against his side on her small couch. "You're unforgettable. You're everything." And when he finally left at 3 a.m, after kissing her until she couldn't remember her own name, Chloe knew she was in too deep. This wasn't just attraction anymore. This was something that would either save them both or destroy them completely. 3 weeks into their secret relationship, reality came crashing back in the form of a man named Vincent Castellano, the same man who'd made inappropriate comments at the dinner party. He showed up at the mansion unannounced, brushing past Mrs. Chen with the arrogance of someone who thought himself untouchable. Chloe was in the library dusting shelves when she heard raised voices from the study. Dominic's tone was ice cold, controlled fury barely leashed. "You don't get to show up here without an invitation, Castellano. I go where I please, Russo. Or have you forgotten who helped your father build this empire? My father's debts died with him. You have no claim here." A pause. Then Castellano's voice dropped to something uglier. "That's where you're wrong. See, I've been hearing interesting rumors about you and a certain pretty little housekeeper. Does she know what you really are? Does she know about the blood on your hands?" The sound of something slamming, a fist on wood maybe, made Chloe jump. "Stay away from her. Or what? You'll kill me like you killed Marco Vitale? Like you killed your own father when he stood in your way?" The silence that followed was deafening. Chloe's heart stopped. His father? Dominic killed his own father? "Get out," Dominic said, his voice deadly quiet. "Get out before I do something we'll both regret." "This isn't over, Russo. You've gotten soft, weak, and weakness in our world? That's a death sentence." Footsteps approached the library, and Chloe quickly turned back to the shelves pretending to work. But Castellano stopped in the doorway, his cold eyes finding her immediately. "Ah, there she is. The girl who tamed the beast." He smiled, and it was like watching a snake bare its fangs. "Enjoy it while it lasts, sweetheart. Men like Russo, they don't change. They just get better at hiding their true nature." Then he was gone, leaving Chloe shaking. Moments later, Dominic appeared, his face pale, his hands clenched into fists. "How much did you hear?" "Enough." She set down the duster, turning to face him fully. Did you really kill your father?" The pain that flashed across his face was answer enough. He moved to the window, staring out at the grounds. "My father was a monster. He hurt people for fun, sold drugs to kids, trafficked women. I tried to change things from the inside, to make the family business less evil. But he wouldn't listen. He said I was weak, that I'd destroy everything he built. So you killed him? So I stopped him. Dominic's voice was hollow. There was a meeting. He was going to order the execution of an entire family, including their children, because the father had witnessed something he shouldn't have. I couldn't let that happen, so I challenged him. We fought. He pulled a gun. I defended myself. He turned to face her, and the anguish in his eyes broke her heart. The family declared it a fair challenge, self-defense. They made me the new boss because I'd proven I was stronger, but it doesn't change what I did. I killed my own father, Chloe. I'm a patricide, a monster. Chloe crossed the room to him, taking his face in her hands. You're not a monster. You saved those children. You stopped him from doing something horrible. I'm still a murderer. You're a man who did what he had to do to survive, to protect others. She pulled him down, pressing her forehead to his. I'm not saying it was right. I'm not saying it doesn't haunt you, but it doesn't make you a monster. It makes you human. His arms came around her, crushing her against him. I don't deserve you. Then I guess we're both getting more than we deserve. But even as she held him, even as she tried to comfort him, Chloe couldn't shake Castellano's words. This wasn't over, and something told her the danger was just beginning. She was right. 2 days later, she was leaving the estate after her shift when a car pulled up beside her at the bus stop. The window rolled down, and a man she'd never seen before smiled at her, all charm and white teeth and expensive cologne. Chloe Martinez, I'm Anthony Marino. I work with Mr. Russo. He asked me to give you a ride home. Something felt wrong. Marcus usually drove her, and Dominic always told her in advance. But this man knew her name, seemed legitimate, and it was starting to rain. I don't think... Mr. Russo insisted. Said he had an urgent business matter and couldn't get away himself. The man's smile widened. Come on, it's pouring. You'll catch your death out here. Against her better judgment, Chloe got in the car. They'd barely pulled away from the curb when she realized her mistake. The door locks engaged with an audible click, and Anthony Marino's friendly expression vanished. Change of plans, sweetheart. You're not going home. Fear flooded her system. Where are you taking me? Somewhere Mr. Russo will find very motivating. He glanced at her in the rearview mirror, and his eyes were cold. See, Castellano thinks your boyfriend needs a reminder of what happens when people get soft. And you, pretty girl, are going to be that reminder. Chloe's mind raced. She reached for her phone, but Marino was faster. He plucked it from her hand and tossed it out the window. None of that now. Let's keep this simple. You behave, you might actually survive this. The car drove for what felt like hours. They ended up at an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts, exactly the kind of place where bad things happened. Marino pulled her out, his grip bruising, and dragged her inside. The warehouse was massive, empty, except for old crates and a chair in the middle. Castellano stood beside it, smoking a cigar, looking pleased. Excellent work, Anthony. Tie her up. Don't touch me! Chloe struggled, but Marino was stronger. He forced her into the chair, binding her wrists with rope that bit into her skin. Her mind raced through everything Dominic had ever told her about his world, trying to find something, anything that might help. Castellano circled her slowly, like a predator. Nothing personal, my dear. You're just a means to an end. Russo needs to remember his place. Needs to remember that people who care, they're vulnerable. That's the lesson his father never taught him properly. He'll kill you for this, Chloe said, forcing her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. Perhaps. Or perhaps he'll finally remember what he is. A killer, not a knight in shining armor. Castellano leaned closer, his breath reeking of cigars and whiskey. You think you know him. You think your love changes what's in his blood? I've known the Russo family for 40 years. They don't change. They can't. You're wrong about him. Castellano laughed, a harsh sound. We'll see. When he arrives and I give him a choice, your life or his empire, we'll see exactly who Dominic Russo really is. While Castellano gloated to Marino about his brilliant plan, Chloe tested the ropes. They were tight, painfully so, but not impossible. If she could just work one hand free. She started twisting her wrist slowly, ignoring the burn, focusing on creating slack. Call him, Castellano ordered Marino. Let him know we have his little pet. Make sure he understands. Come alone or she dies. Dominic's phone rang during a meeting. When he saw the unknown number, something cold settled in his gut. Russo, the voice was mocking. We have something of yours, a pretty little blonde. Everything inside Dominic went still. Castellano. Old Miller Warehouse, South Docks. Come alone. Maybe I'll let you have her back in one piece. The line went dead. Dominic exploded into motion, sweeping everything off his desk. Find Marcus, he snarled. Gather the men, now. One thought dominated everything. If he hurts her, I'll burn the city down. The drive felt like an eternity. Behind him, 5 cars of his men followed, but he made them park 2 blocks away. He couldn't risk Chloe's life. The warehouse loomed ahead. Dominic parked and stepped into the dimness. There she was, Chloe tied to a chair, bruised but alive. Rage surged through him. Let her go, Castellano. Castellano emerged with Marino, both holding guns. This stopped being business when you decided to play house. You got soft. I'll give you anything. Territory, money, just let her go. I want you to remember what you are, a killer. Castellano moved closer to Chloe. Watch her fear you. Chloe's voice cut through. You're wrong. Castellano frowned. Excuse me? He's not a monster, and I don't fear him. I love him. The words hit Dominic hard. She loved him. Too bad love doesn't stop bullets, Castellano sneered. Everything happened at once. Castellano raised his gun toward Chloe, but she'd been loosening her ropes. She rolled away. The shot went wide. Dominic lunged at Castellano, his fist connecting with bone. The gun skittered away. The doors burst open. Marcus and 10 men appeared, weapons drawn. Marino surrendered. Dominic stood over Castellano, hand on his own weapon. Every fiber screamed to end this. Dominic, Chloe's voice. Don't. He looked at her, bruised but looking at him with eyes that saw something better. He made a choice. Get him out, Dominic told Marcus. Put him on a boat anywhere that isn't here. If he comes back, kill him. But tonight he lives. Castellano stared in shock. You're letting me go? I'm giving you a second chance. Don't waste it. Marcus hauled them away. Dominic cut Chloe's ropes, hands shaking. Are you hurt? I'm okay. You came for me. Always. He pulled her close. When he called, I would have given him everything. I know. That's how I know you're not what he said. She held him tight. You showed mercy. He framed her face. You said you love me. I do. I love you. I love you too. God, I love you so much. He kissed her desperately. I have to leave this life. I can't keep risking you. What are you saying? I choose you. Over everything. We'll disappear. Start over. They won't let you leave? I'll make them. I'll find a successor. Transfer everything. But I'm done. His jaw set. I want to be the man you see. Hope bloomed in her chest. You mean it? I've never meant anything more. Give me 2 weeks. Then we run together. Okay, she whispered. 2 weeks. The next 2 weeks were a careful dance of secrecy and preparation. Dominic met with the family council, explaining his decision to step down. There was resistance, anger even, but he held firm. He'd found a successor, his cousin Antonio, who was smart and ruthless enough to hold the territory, but moral enough not to become what their father had been. Meanwhile, Chloe gave notice on her apartment, sold what little furniture she had. and prepared to leave behind the only city she'd ever known. It should have been terrifying. Instead, it felt like freedom. On the 13th day, Mrs. Chen pulled Chloe aside in the kitchen. "I know what you two are planning." Chloe's heart stopped. "Mrs. Chen? Don't." The older woman's expression softened in a way Chloe had never seen. "I've worked for the Russo family for 30 years. I watched that boy grow up in a world that tried to make him hard and cruel. But there was always something different about him, something good underneath all the armor." She reached out, squeezing Chloe's hand. "You brought that goodness to the surface. You made him believe he could be more than what his father made him. For that alone, I'll keep your secret." Tears pricked Chloe's eyes. "Thank you. But know this, the council accepted his resignation, but not everyone is happy about it. Be careful, both of you." The warning proved prophetic. On the 14th night, the night before they were supposed to leave, Dominic received an emergency summons to meet with the council one final time. Something about loose ends that needed addressing before the transition. "I don't like it," Chloe said, pacing his study. "It feels like a trap." "It might be, but I have to go. If I don't, they'll never let us leave peacefully." He pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. "I'll take Marcus and the others. I'll be fine. And tomorrow, we start our new life." But he'd been gone for 2 hours when Chloe got the call. Marcus's voice was tight with fear. "Miss Martinez, you need to come to the old Russo family estate. Now. It's Dominic." Her world tilted. "What happened?" "Just come, please. He's asking for you." The drive felt endless. When she finally arrived at the sprawling property on the edge of the city, Marcus met her at the door, his face grave. "He's in the main hall. Miss Martinez, you should prepare yourself." She ran. Down hallways lined with portraits of Russo men long dead, past rooms filled with the history of a family built on blood and power, until she burst into the main hall and saw Dominic. Standing in the center of the room, very much alive, surrounded by every member of the family council. And on the floor at his feet, bound and gagged, was Antonio, the cousin he'd chosen as his successor. "What the hell is going on?" Chloe demanded. The eldest council member, a man named Salvatore, stepped forward. "Miss Martinez, how good of you to join us. You see, we've discovered something interesting about Antonio. He was planning to betray the family the moment he took power, planning to sell us out to our rivals." Dominic's face was stone, but his eyes were anguished. "They want me to execute him. Say it's the only way to prove the family can trust my judgment." Understanding crashed over her. This was the final test. Kill his cousin, prove he was still one of them, or refuse and forfeit their chance to leave safely. "One traitor's death," Salvatore said calmly, "or your freedom. Choose, Dominic." The silence in the room was suffocating. Chloe looked at the man on the floor, Antonio, who'd apparently been planning treachery, but was still Dominic's family, still someone he'd trusted, and then at Dominic, who looked like he was being torn apart. "There has to be another way," Chloe said desperately. "There isn't." Salvatore's tone was final. "This is the price of walking away. Blood for freedom. Make your choice, Russo." For a long moment, Dominic stared at the floor, his fists clenched. Then he looked up, and the expression on his face made everyone in the room take a step back. "No." "Excuse me?" "I said no." Dominic's voice was quiet but absolute. "I didn't leave my father's world just to become him. I didn't fight to be something better just to prove I'm still a killer. You want blood? You want proof I'm one of you? Then you've already lost me." He turned to Chloe, holding out his hand. "Let's go." She didn't hesitate. She crossed to him, taking his hand, and together they turned toward the door. "You walk out that door," Salvatore called out, "and you're no longer under family protection. You're on your own, both of you." Dominic paused, looking back over his shoulder. Then I guess we'll have to protect each other. They left the Russo estate hand in hand, walking into an uncertain future. Behind them, the family council let them go, whether out of respect for what Dominic had been or disgust at what he'd refused to become. Chloe would never know. But as they drove away in Dominic's car, heading for the airport and the new life waiting for them in a city where no one knew their names, Chloe felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. "Are you scared?" she asked quietly. Dominic laced his fingers through hers, bringing her hand to his lips. Terrified, but also more free than I've ever been. "We did it, Chloe. We actually did it." 6 months later, they stood on a beach in a small coastal town, exchanging vows in front of a handful of people who'd become their chosen family. Dominic wore a simple suit. Chloe wore a white dress from a thrift store. And when they kissed as husband and wife, it tasted like victory and new beginnings. They'd opened a small restaurant together. Chloe managed the front, Dominic cooked in the back, his violent hands learning to create instead of destroy. At night, they'd sit on their tiny apartment balcony and watch the sunset. "Do you miss it?" she asked one evening, curled against his side, the ocean breeze playing with her hair. "The power?" He was quiet for a moment, his hand running through her hair in a gesture that had become familiar. "I miss the certainty sometimes, knowing my place. But then I look at you, at this life we built with our own hands, and I realize I never had a real place in that world. I was just surviving, going through motions. This is living. This is what it means to truly be alive." A year after they'd run, Chloe got a package with no return address. Inside was a photograph, her and Dominic at their restaurant, laughing together behind the counter. On the back, in Mrs. Chen's elegant handwriting, he chose well. "Be happy. You both deserve it." They framed it and hung it in their bedroom, a reminder of the life they'd left behind and the love that had made escape possible, a reminder that sometimes, against all odds, people could choose to be better. Their story wasn't a fairy tale. There were hard days when bills piled up. There were nights when Dominic woke from nightmares. There were moments when Chloe wondered if they'd been naive to think love could conquer his past. But then he'd pull her close and whisper, "You saved me." And she'd whisper back, "We saved each other." Because that's what they'd done. Two people from impossible worlds had found each other in the darkness and chosen to step into the light together. On their second anniversary, Dominic woke Chloe before dawn and drove her to a hill overlooking the ocean. As the sun rose, he turned to her with tears in his eyes. "You showed me that redemption isn't about erasing the past. It's about choosing a different future. Every day I choose you. I choose this life. I choose the man I'm becoming." Chloe kissed him, tasting their tears. "And I choose the man who was brave enough to walk away from everything for something real. You're my choice, Dominic. Today and every day." Their story had started with obsession and danger, with a mafia boss who couldn't stop watching a girl in a coffee shop, and a young woman desperate enough to take a job that should have terrified her. But it ended with something far more powerful than obsession, far more lasting than danger. It ended with love that changed everything. Love that transformed monsters into men and made the impossible feel inevitable. Love that proved that sometimes the most dangerous choice was also the only one worth making.